أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وصلى اللهم على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولله المشرق والمغرب فأينما تولوا فثم وجه الله صلوات على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Inshallah, tonight there are only maybe 2 more nights left until the 10th of Muharram. Tonight is the night of the 8th, tomorrow is going to be Shabi Ashur. And then Monday, we will have the A'mal of the 10th of Muharram, inshallah. I believe we discussed, the brothers and I discussed before. 11 o'clock, inshallah, we will begin the A'mal of the 10th of Muharram. So, everybody is requested to be there punctually because we would like to finish the A'mal before Dhuhr time, and then we will have the Majlis of Ashura. So if you would be here early, be here on time. This way we can get everything started in a proper manner. We can do the best A'mal, the most A'mal that we possibly can, inshallah, before Salatul Dhuhr. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Tonight, I want to talk to you about spiritual reform and revolution. More specifically, when we talk about mind and body, there is something called mind-body dualism, meaning these are two opposites that go hand in hand. And indeed, the whole idea between this dualism is that there is a physical side to life and a metaphysical side to life. I should reverse it. There's a metaphysical side to life called the mind, and a physical side to life called the body. But, in Islam we say there is the mind, there is the body, there is the ruh, there is the aql, there is the nafs. And these things or these categories are very different from each other. Mind, body, brain, ruh, aql, nafs. Sometimes we mix some of them up to mean the same thing. Mind or brain and body. Body is this physical existence that we have here right now. Brain is all the nerves that exist on the top of my head that form this organ that we call the brain. And all the synaptic nerves, all the synapses, all the energy, all the electricity that moves from one nerve to another inside my head, we call the brain. Mind is the collective thoughts processes of the human being. Indeed, we find in the statements of Ahlul Bayt, I believe I said this before as well, you see, Imam Ali says, I do not worship a God that I cannot see. But he didn't say, I could not see him with these physical, I saw him with these physical eyes, or even with my brain. He says, I see them with my mind's eye. I see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with my mind's eye, which is saying there's a difference between body, mind, and then we have aql. I've talked about this before as well. Aql is sometimes translated into rationality, but this has a deeper translation if you want to expand the idea of the Islamic understanding of aql, they would say it's aql ilahi. It's that divine characteristic of mankind that connects mankind back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, I said this in the Jum'ah khutbah, I don't know if it's as much as, but in the Jum'ah khutbah I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Christians have a statement that says God created man in his image. And then we have the Sistine Chapel where the physical God, very muscular being, is a picture of him pointing to Adam, and he creates Adam with just a touch of a finger. We have the same tradition, but we say that the ta'weel of that tradition is different. Because God is not a physical being. And when he says, I created mankind in my image, he's saying, I gave mankind divine intellect. Aql ilahi. Rationality, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 times 4 equals 16, 16 times 16, I don't know, I'm bad at math. 5 plus 5, 5 times 5 is 25, that's rational. If we want to talk about our health, that's rational. If I say right now that I'm going to, after Muharram inshallah, this is the promise to myself, I'm going to go for a jog. And although I hate sports and I hate jogging, I hate walking. That's a rational statement. If I want to take care of my health and a doctor prescribes, for example, if I have a heart problem, he prescribes metformin, that is a rational thing. If I have a mental disorder and the doctor prescribes medication for it, that's rational. If during the time at the beginning of Corona, they would say that you should have turmeric as part of the cure for Corona, and I believe in Iran they give out kits with turmeric in it. But me eating this turmeric or me having this medication, it's rational, yes, but it does not connect me to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the divine intellect is such that it makes man feel whole. It makes man heal by connecting oneself to the principle of existence, which is none other than the nature of the divine. I need to feel whole. You need to feel whole. Regardless of what we put on our bodies, what exercises we do, we cannot feel whole unless we are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please say salawat. Mind, body, soul, up, ruh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls sometimes Jibreel the Ruh al-Quds, the Holy Spirit, as they would say in English. Ruh, spirit, is different from mind, body. It is something of a higher plane of existence, and nafs is even higher, you could say. Sometimes people mistake brain and mind, but then we also mistake ruh and nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the noble tradition of Ahlul Bayt is mentioned by saying, Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbah. Let me backtrack a little bit, talk about aql at first. When Allah subhanahu in the Surah Al-Kafi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Sharm, Haya, all the characteristics of virtue follow aql. أول ما خلق الله نوري أول ما خلق الله نوري أول ما خلق الله الحق. The first thing Allah created, أول ما خلق الله العقل. The first thing that Allah created was the Muhammadan light, which was aql itself. Because أول ما خلق الله نوري, first thing this one tradition is saying, Allah created is the Nur Muhammadi. And the second tradition says, أول ما خلق الله الحق, the first thing Allah created is aql, meaning the divine intellect. This ruh that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has breathed into us, this divine nature, is the first thing He created, which is Nur al-Muhammad. This aql is so powerful that all the fadilah follow it. If I put aql, and the goal of life in Islam is to put aql at the helm of your ship. They say we have different characteristics, and all of the purpose of the Islamic ethics is to make sure that aql is at its rightful position. When I perform my ibadat, I should perform them with the idea that aql has to run my ibadat. Aql has to rule my ibadat. Sometimes we go on a roller coaster ride when we pray. It's like going to Six Flags. I don't know if you've been. And it goes up and down and sideways, and we think about everything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We start here in namaz, sometimes we end up over here. Because we want to have the best intention, best concentration, but then we lose everything and we go everywhere. Sometimes it is even a blessing that we remember the number of rak'at that we prayed. Because we get so intertwined in this world that we forget. Incidentally, there's mind exercises that one can perform that connects mankind back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Allah. So for example, if I'm praying and somehow I remember I left my keys in the fridge, for example, I can actually connect that thought back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and connect it back to my prayer by thinking, how merciful is that God who made me remember that I left my keys in the fridge? And then I say, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdih, all glory to my great sustainer whom I praise, and I get up. But these are ways to bring back concentration into our ibadah. And indeed, every one of the mustahabat that we do to prepare ourselves for prayer is a preparation for the concentration exercise of prayer. I said this before, if I'm not concentrating in my prayer is hitting the fan. If I'm not thinking, putting aql in its place, listen, I just don't mean just during the prayer. I have to make my wajibat, my mustahabat worthwhile. If I am worried, and I said this before as well, this is a member of Rasulullah, I have to mention the truth over here. If I am worried about breaking my fast with a date or salt or water, and my son or my daughter is going through haram in their life, then I personally would say, forget the mustahabat, my mustahabat are worthless. Focus on the wajibat and make sure that I have spread the network of acceptance and love and compassion for my children so vast that I encourage them back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, this is one of the main purposes of the majalis of Imam Hussain. It brings us back to the path of Allah. Insan shanasi, haq shanasi, kedar shanasi. This is all a part of Imam Hussain. And indeed, there's this Pakistani mujtahid in Najaf, Hafiz Bashir, Najafi. Incidentally, when we talk about Shaheed Arif Hussaini, who was Imam Khomeini's representative to Pakistan, there were a few ulama who he trusted completely in terms of their zuhud and their character. One of them, he mentioned this in his lecture as well, was Hafiz Bashir Najafi. Hafiz, he says, look, the purpose of the ziyarah is when we go to Karbala, we go to Najaf, we go to Qaramain, we go to Mashhad, we go to Qum, is to seek closeness to the person we are visiting. And not just physical closeness. He says, look, if I am doing the ziyarah of Imam Hussein, I'm physically close to him. But if my ziyarah was just for physical qurbah, then the enemies who were killed by Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura and buried in Karbala, they've been physically close to Imam Hussein for 1400 years. But they get nothing. Qurbat of Imam Hussein, if I am reciting the majlis of Imam Hussein and the youth comes to the majlis of Imam Hussein, regardless of whether they do this sin in Muharram or afterwards, they don't get the lesson from Imam Hussein. They are sitting in majlis. They are sitting in majlis, but they're not getting majlis. They might be sitting in majlis, they might be crying. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Second time for the love of Fatima Al-Zahra, salawat ala Muhammad. MashaAllah, the children are loving the majlis of Imam Hussein. That's a good sign. Inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. For the love of Fatima Al-Zahra, salawat ala Muhammad. When we talk about this dichotomy, and I wanted to mention other things as well, look, there is a difference between mind-body relationship as perceived in the Western world, which say that there's mind and body. You see, look, there was a time where people used to say space and time. They did not realize that they were part of the one and the same continuum. Mind and body is the same thing. People do not realize right now that they are part of the same existence. Where what I put in my body, what I do to my body, has a direct effect on what I put into my nafs and what I put into my soul and my mind and body. If I put in haram in my body, not just khinzir or alcohol, if I buy food with money from which khums and zakat were wajib on me, and I did not give that khums and zakat, that food is haram on me. I'm putting haram in my stomach. One of the things about Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam said on the day of Ashura to his enemies, he says, they are fighting me because they have haram in their stomachs. That has a direct effect on my spirituality, dear brothers and sisters. And indeed, we are here on the majlis of Imam Hussein. We are here to get the greatest lessons of spirituality. The greatest barakah of the majlis of Imam Hussein is here. And then when we talk about this mind-body dualism, as they call it in Western philosophy, this mind-body dualism has its roots in ancient philosophy, where Plato and Socrates, because Socrates does not write any one of his works, his student wrote plays. One of my teachers would say, we don't even know if Socrates is real or if he's just a character in one of Plato's plays. Because he left nothing, his students are the ones that left him, his dialogues and everything. He used to say, and this was a belief for a long time, that there exists a world of ideal forms. I am sitting on the mimbar, and when I say mimbar, a vision of a perfect mimbar comes to your mind. The idea of the perfect mimbar coming into your mind is proof that that mimbar must exist. This mic is in front of me. If I take this mic away from you, away from your sight, and I say mic, a vision or a picture of a mic comes into your head. That means he says that that mic must exist. But they argue saying that mankind has been chained to the physical world so that they cannot see the realities of human existence. The famous allegory of Plato and Socrates is that of the cave. He mentions this in the Republic, where he says most human beings are tied down in a cave facing a wall. They're in shackles. Behind them there's a fire, and they see silhouetted figures moving around because of the light of the fire onto the wall that they're facing. And they think that's it. That's the body part of it. They think that the shadows are real. When one of the persons, they break free of these shackles, they go outside. For some time they're blinded by the sun's light because they have never seen such a light, such a powerful light. But when they see the reality, they go back to their cave mates and tell them, and the cave mates, they say the same things that the Arabs and the Prophet, Sha'ir, Majnoon, Sihr, Mubin, and all of that. This is fake, we don't believe you. The Prophet is the one who was never chained down to this cave. The prophets and the awliya of Allah are not chained down to this cave. They see metaphysical existence and reality the way it truly is. They see it and they tell us about it. Imam Ali sees Allah with his mind's eye and he tells us about it. This idea, and this is not just about the Ma'sumin or Anbiya or Aimma Ahlul Bayt. There are individuals, I said this before as well, there is Ismat Allah al-Kubra, which is the highest level of Isma, but that is for the prophets and the Ma'sumin of Ahlul Bayt. There is Ismat al-Sughra, which in common terminology, they would say is mahfuz an al-khata, meaning they are perfect, they are protected from making a mistake. And not only those who lived during the time of Ahlul Bayt, but ulama within the time of the Ghaibat of Imam al-Zaman have reached that status. How many of you know of Sayyid Radi and Sayyid Murtada? In Sunnism they say Sharif Radi and Sharif Murtada. Sharif Radi is the compiler of Nahj al-Balagha. The story goes, the first generation of ulama and mujtahideen after the Ghaibat Kubra of Imam Zaman, they were teaching their dars, and the highest ranking mujtahid of the first generation of Imam Zaman's Ghaibat was Shaykh al-Mufid. Shaykh al-Mufid sees in his dream that Fatima Al-Zahra has come to his dream. And she has two Hassan and Hussein in her sides, on her sides. Hassan on one side and Hussein on the other. She says, Mufid, these are my children, I want you to teach them. He wakes up, goes outside, there's a Sayyida, Sayyidani woman coming up to him, same thing as a dream, two kids on her side. And she says, Mufid, these are my children, I want you to teach them. So he teaches them. There are different stories as to the life of ulama when it comes to this idea. When Sayyid Radi, Sharif Murtada, Sayyid Murtada got older and they became mujtahid, they became scholars, people noticed that Sayyid Murtada never went to Karbala. Let me backtrack a little bit. Their father died, and they were performing executing the will, the wasiyah, and they were seeing and distributing the property, and all that was left was one book. So you know what Sayyid Razi says? The one who has never done any sin should get this book. And then Sayyid Murtada says the one who has never even thought of sin should get the book. And then the younger brother, Sayyid Razi, realizes that his brother was at the maqam that he never even thought of sin. He was at that level. They say that when they got older, they became mujtahideen, they became marja, they became high-ranking scholars. People were following them and everything, and their taqleed and everything. Sayyid Murtada never went to Karbala. And people started criticizing him, saying, what bad akhlaq your mother must have had, that you never went to Karbala. He says, if I go, I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. He knew. But when Sayyid Razi convinced him to go to Karbala, he stepped one foot in Karbala, and he was so overcome with emotion, that he completely left his school. I mentioned the story of Sayyid Sistani. Sayyid Sistani, the fatwa of Daesh. I'll repeat this idea again, this is very important. Ulama, in the first generation of the Ghaibat of Imam Zaman, we can think of it at that level. But we have ulama today that they hide themselves. Look, many people think irfan is about showing off your karamat. An arif never shows off more than 5% of their karamat. 95% they're hiding. We don't know. Jawadi Amani is a big arif. He's only shown less than 5% of what he's capable of doing. Hassan Zadeh Amani, great arif. Less than 5%. The humility that comes in with hiding yourself is one of the main goals of this spirituality. Indeed, they only show off, they only show what they can to the extent that they know that this is not going to create hasad or kib or takabbur in their bodies, in their mind, in their hearts. That is the level of purity. When we talk about all of this whole idea is to get to that level, we need to have tazkiyah nafs. We need to have insan shanasi. We need to have kirdar shanasi. If I do not have tazkiyah nafs, do I think I'm going to reach the level of Jawadi Amani? And in Islam, we say everybody, there are 8 billion people today, alive today, everybody can have the level of life of an arif. We say irfan is practicable by everybody, not irfan nazari, but irfan amani. You perform your wajibat on time and avoid all the muharramat, that's it. And you have that level of concentration where you're living in the moment and you're concentrating on the here and now, and you're living in the moment concentrating on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can get there. My teacher, Marhum Ayatullah Sajidi, used to say, look, Allah rewards people who are traveling the path of Sayyid and Saluk by how difficult their test is. You can live in Najaf and Qom and Mashhad and Karbala and become a very powerful alim. Because these are the sources of what I call hyper irfan. You can go straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he says the one who tries in America, even tries, they try to take one step, not even take one step. And they take one step, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them for 100 more times than the one in Najaf or Qom or Mashhad. Because this life in this country is harder. Dear brothers and sisters, we have an imam who's in Ghaibah. If we try here right now, we can be with the Imam. We can be with the Imam. I was talking to Brother Abu Ahmad. One of the traditions of the return of Sahib al-Zaman. My time is almost up. One of the traditions of the return of Sahib al-Zaman is that the sun will rise from the west. We've heard this. The sun goes from the east to the west. They say that the sun will rise from the west. Now, Allah has the power to make the physical sun rise from the west. But the spiritual ta'weel of this tradition is that the son of Irfan and Hikmah and Hikmat Amali, Hikmat Muta'aliya, Hikmat Ishraq. This idea that the Muslims in the West and people in the West will show the people in the East, if I live in such a God-forsaken society and I live my life in such a God-oriented manner, what are you doing in Karbala when you don't pray on time? What are you doing in Najaf if you do not follow the akhlaq of Amir al-Mu'mineen? The sisters here are a prime example. Look, you go out into the streets of Pakistan and most women don't wear hijab. They are the best examples of what the Shia women of and the companions of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, the female companions, and we believe there will be female governors among Maulana's government, will be like. In Pakistan, we have family systems. Afghanistan, family systems. In Iraq and Iran, they have the holy sites. And they have that network. If the woman in Pakistan is not wearing hijab, these women who come to the masjid of Imam Hussein in proper hijab are an example to the women of the East. What am I saying? The sun is rising from the West, saying that if the Muslims, if people in this world, in the Western world, where there's absence of God and everything, can live a God-oriented life, what's it doing with you? I need to have that kirdar shanasi. I need to have that insan shanasi. I need to have that character building. I need to have that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my heart. I need to show people. If I don't live, if I don't pray, or if I don't, I'm not playing a blame game on parents or leaders or anybody. But if I don't pray, how can I expect you to pray? If I, as somebody wearing the amama of Rasulullah in my head, do not have the characteristics of an alim or a mu'min or a Muslim, how can I expect you to have the characteristics of an alim or a mu'min or a Muslim? If a parent does not pray on time, and their whole life they are teaching their children about music and Netflix and YouTube and everything, I mention this sometimes. Back in the Hukumat of Muhammad Khatami in Iran, the supreme leader said something. Ayatollah Khamenei, he said something once in a gathering of actors and everything. He said in 1979, people used to follow the ulama. They used to actively follow the qa'ideen who were wearing the aba and the mama of Rasulullah. They would follow them. He says in the 90s, they follow actors more than they follow ulama. In the 2000s now, they follow Facebook, Ayatollah Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Netflix. And they get their character building from these sites. If a parent does not watch what is going through the mind and the eyes of the youth, what can I expect that my child will follow the path of Ahlul Bayt? No. I can't, right? I have to put where my money, where my mouth is. I have to live that life. I have to show that if I need to know, look, we're talking about ulama, and I just mentioned the Supreme Leader, Imam Khomeini, he was in France, he knew everything that was happening in Iran. He knew everything. Ayatollah Sistani, when the Americans were invading Najaf, about to, and Muqtada's forces were in the Haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ayatollah Sistani was going through heart surgery in a hospital in London. He was in London going through heart surgery. They say that he said to his representative, I believe Murtada Kashmiri in London, and some other ulama, that he said to them, I cannot go to sleep until I do mutala'a of kitab, multiple books. So he says, get me some books. So they get him books on the natural sciences, physical sciences, books in the Hausa that were printed literally the day before, so that they will say that since this son does not read these books, he can do mutala'a of them. They bought him 40, 50 books, and he says they left him, they came back a few hours later, he had a pile of books over here, 60%, and a pile of books over here, 40%. He said, I've already read the 60%, you can take those back, leave the remaining to me. I need to know. And indeed, the example of Ayatollah al-Sistani is very strong. There is ulama mujtahideen, they write Tawzih al-Masail. They write Islamic laws. Ayatollah Sistani has a specific book called Jurisprudence Made Easy. Same laws of fiqh as in his Tawzih al-Masail, but it is put in the form of a dialogue between a father and son. The son becomes baligh, the father starts telling him the rules of bulugh and the rules of Islam. And the son asks father every single question that he wants. I need to be the source of Islamic knowledge for my children. I don't know why the book was written, but the way I see it, my children need to have that relationship with me, that they come to me for everything. I need to have that original relationship with them, that they come to me for everything. That they don't just go to Netflix and watch God knows what. And they get their, na'udhu billah, sexual ethics from Netflix. The book, when it comes to the rules of ahkamat of women, the son is asking the father, what is this, what is that? I need to make sure that I have the final say in what is going through the minds of my children. And indeed, the biggest sign for me, for myself, and I'm saying this as a personal matter, of the sun rising from the west is the attachment that our children have to Ahlul Bayt. The fact that mothers and fathers bring their children to the Majlis of Imam Hussein after a long day's work, and I see many young faces sitting down, is a proof that the sun is rising from the west. It is rising from the west. That ends the discussion for today. Sorry if I took a little bit longer over time. Tonight, I want to talk to you about two brothers in Karbala. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he goes to his brother Aqil. Aqil knew the lineages of all the Arab tribes and the characteristics of all the Arab tribes. So Imam Ali went up to him and he said to him, "Oh Aqil, I want you to find me a tribe and a woman who is known for their shuja'at, so they can give me a son that will protect my son on the plains of Karbala." Aqil finds the tribe of Fatima Kilabiyya. Fatima Kilabiyya is al-Banin. And they arranged for that marriage. Fatima Kilabiyya, Fatima, her name was Fatima. She had such a love of Fatima to Zahra and the children of Bibi Fatima in her heart that once she became wed to Amir al-Mu'mineen, she was about to go to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and she saw Hassanain and Zainab and Kulthum were crying. Hassanain and Zainab and Kulthum were crying. She says to him, Ya Ali, please do not call me Fatima anymore, because when you call me Fatima, it reminds the children of Fatima to Zahra of their mother. I don't want to be the source or the reason why the children of Fatima to Zahra are crying. al-Banin means the mother of many sons. She had 4 sons. All of them were sacrificed in Karbala. But let me backtrack a little bit. Imam Ali alayhi salam is on his deathbed. He hands off each and every single one of the members of his family to Imam al-Hasan. He hands them all off to the care of Imam al-Hasan. They say Imam Ali was in the state of almost being passed out. He had that poison running through his body. They say he woke up and he saw Abu al-Fadl Abbas, al-Banin crying. He saw al-Banin crying. She says, what's the problem? He says, what's the problem? She says, well, did my Abbas make any mistake? You handed off all the Banu Hashim to Imam al-Hasan. You did not hand off Abbas to anybody. Dear brothers and sisters, at that time Imam Ali hands off Abu al-Fadl Abbas to Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. He hands him off to the care of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. Imam Ali breathes his last. Dear brothers and sisters, Imam Ali breathes his last. Abu al-Fadl Abbas is not allowed to pick up the sword because Imam al-Hasan, when he saw Imam Ali become shaheed, he saw Abu al-Fadl Abbas wanted to fight. But Imam Hassan says, Abu al-Fadl Abbas, put back your sword. Abu al-Fadl Abbas was born to protect Ahl al-Bayt. On the day of Ashura, they say all of the Sahaba went. And one by one, after the Shahada of all the Sahaba, Ahlul Bayt started to go. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas used to come to Imam Hussein. He would always ask him permission to go fight. Imam Hussein alayhi salam used to say, Abbas, you are the standard bearer of my army. You are the recognizing point of my army. What will the army do without you, Abbas? I will not let you go. At one time, all of the Sahaba had become shaheed. All of Ahlul Bayt had become shaheed. Abu al-Fadl Abbas, he comes to Imam al-Hussein and he asks him, he tells him, Maulana, give me permission to go fight. Imam al-Hussein says, Abu al-Fadl Abbas, he says it again, you are the standard bearer of my forces. Abu al-Fadl Abbas looks to Imam Hussein, he says, Ya Maulana, where has that force gone? Each and every single one of your soldiers has become shaheed. Please let me go to the water. Please let me go fight for you. Imam Hussein says, fine, I will not let you fight. But if you want, I will have you get water. But first go seek permission from your sister Zainab salamullahi alayha. He goes to the tent of Lady Zainab and he asks for permission. You know what Lady Zainab says? She says to him, Abbas, when my father Ali ibn Abi Talib was alive, he had the tradition of kissing. He had the tradition of kissing my head and my hands. I never had the courage to ask my father why he would kiss my hands and my hands. At this deathbed, I finally mustered up the courage to ask him, Ya father, oh father, Ya Abi, why are you kissing my head and my hands? He said to me, Abbas, that there will be a time when there will be no veil on your head, Zainab, and your hands will be tied in ropes. She says to Abbas, I knew my father when he said was going to come true, but then she says, I also knew that as long as I had a brother like Abbas, nobody would be able to steal my hijab. Nobody would be able to steal my veil. Nobody would be able to put my hands in ropes. Abbas, go now. I know that I'm going to be imprisoned. My veil is going to be stolen and my hands are going to be put in chains and robes. Abul Fadl Abbas, alayhi salam, he goes to the riverbank. He has the water bag. He has the standard. He has the alam. He goes to the riverbank. They say he reached the riverbank. He reached the riverbank. He never took out his sword. He never brought his sword. He would part the enemies with a lance that he had, and he would make way for them to get water, for himself to get water. He reached the riverbank. He reached the riverbank, dear brothers and sisters. He got off his horse. He went towards the river. He put up his arms in a cup and he got some water in his hands. And he says to this water, Ya nafs min ba'd al-Husayni honi. What is life after Hussein? Life after Hussein is absolutely worthless. He throws that water back. They say, dear brothers and sisters, he filled the water bag. As he was riding back, they say that one of the Umar ibn Sa'ad said, woe to you, O soldiers of Yazid. Do you know Yazid will kill you, all of you, if water reaches Hussein today? They say they started throwing arrows and weapons, but nobody could reach Abbas. Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam had to pass through an area where there were some date palm trees, and there were people hiding behind those date palm trees. He would pass one date palm tree, and somebody came from the behind, and he chopped off Abu Fadl Abbas's right hand. Same thing happened with his left hand. Somebody came from behind, he chopped off his left hand. They say Abu Fadl Abbas, when his hands were chopped off, he had the flag on his chest, and he was holding the water bag with his teeth. They say, dear brothers and sisters, that the water bag was pierced. Abu Fadl Abbas, when he saw the water bag was pierced, he went back to get more water. They say, brothers and sisters, somebody hit Abu Fadl Abbas on the head. Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, they say somebody hit him in the eye with an arrow. Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, he wanted to take the arrow out of his eye, so he bent down and somebody hit him over the head. He says, they say, dear brothers and sisters, when Abu Fadl Abbas fell, he says to his master, O Master Hussein, I bid you my final farewell. Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, Imam Hussein, when he hears Abu Fadl Abbas's final farewell, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he says, now my back has been broken. My back has been broken. Imam Hussein, Abu Fadl Abbas, remember he has an arrow in his eye, meaning both his eyes are bloodied with the blood of the arrow that has hit his eye. They say that Abu Fadl Abbas, when he fell onto those arrows that were in his eyes and his body. They say, dear brothers and sisters, Abu Fadl Abbas could not see. Imam Hussein rushed to the side of his brother. Abu Fadl Abbas originally, when he heard somebody coming, he thought it was an enemy. He said, let me wait for my master Hussein. Imam Hussein says, Abbas, this is your brother Hussein. Abbas, this is your brother Hussein. Imam al-Hussein sits down. He takes Abu Fadl Abbas's head and he puts it on his lap. He takes Abu Fadl Abbas and removes the head. Imam al-Hussein asks him, Oh Abbas, why are you removing the head? He says, Maula, there will be a time where you will be on the plains of Karbala. There will be nobody to put your head on their lap. I don't want to be there. Abu Fadl Abbas left a few wasiyah that his body should never be brought back to the tents because he was humiliated, he was shy in front of Sakina. I conclude with this point, dear brothers and sisters, when Ahlul Bayt returned from Karbala to Kufa and Sham back to Medina, al-Banin alayhi salam, she heard the musibah of her son Abu Fadl Abbas, and she would often recite the Marsiyah saying, O people, when somebody falls to the ground, they usually put their hands in front of them to protect them from the fall. When my Abbas fell to the ground from the horse, he had no hands to protect him from the fall. He fell and there was an arrow on his eye and his body was covered with arrows. Abbas did not fall to the ground. He fell on arrows. Inna lillah وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون امرأة الحسين.
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين